Yo, what it is, everybody? Thanks for tuning back in here to another episode here on the Speedbug channel. We got the R1M here behind me on the stand, and y'all seen the title? First Service. And you know, break-in oil that's got to come out, so we're pretty much going to do an oil change as well. Check the chain tension. Now I have kept an eye on it, just so you guys know as well, because I have ridden it. And let's see, I kick it with my foot. It's not too loose, but it's not too tight for the ones that did see. Let me get it one more time. So it's still actually pretty much good within spec, so I don't really have to adjust it just yet. But I'm sure after a few more jumps and pulls, we will have to adjust it. But primarily, we'll go over the bike, check all the nuts and bolts, nicks and crannies, you know, get all in between it, you know, toes and feet and fingers and all that, and make sure everything is still on the up and up with the R1M. As an update for you guys, if anyone's wondering, so far, absolutely zero issues with the bike since I've had it so far, as well since it has been flashed. Still no issues or anything like that. Everything works perfectly fine, flawless as expected, and everything from Blaze Cycle. And of course, like I said, you know I'm not a fan of the Yamaha brand, but they knocked it out with the Gen 2 version of this series of this motorcycle. So let's get rolling. Let's get this bike jacked up. And we got to get the left fairing off here so that we can get to the oil filter and get to the bottom, and as well as drain all the oil. So let's get this thing going and let's get it rolling. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, so now that we have the left fairing off of the motorcycle, we can expose the bike with the oil filter and obviously the drain plug. Here we have the oil filter, and underneath, right here, you guys can see, here is the drain plug. The best part about using a GoPro, you can get in so many tight places. It's great. But anyway, so we'll go ahead and get the oil filter drained out, get a little piece of cardboard or something here so it doesn't drip all over the header, and then obviously get our drain pan and get that going ahead and drained out all the motor oil. Thing uses 1040. Obviously they want you to use Yamalube, but again, it's oil choice, owner's choice as far as preference. Again, I personally use Mobil 1. As you see my big banner here, Mobil 1. No, I'm not sponsored or anything by them, but I run that in all my vehicles, and everything works great. You know, as I said, they have their own Formula 1 team, race teams, and many other things, and I've ran it, and tests have well exceeded anything that, of course, that I'm going to be utilizing and doing with my bike. So haven't had anything blow up yet. But again, if you want to use Yamalube or Royal Purple or Pennzoil or anything like that, just make sure it meets the recommendations and the minimum specifications to your bike, and you obviously shouldn't have an issue. But again, I use Mobil 1, so I'm going to go ahead and put Mobil 1 back in it. And I went ahead and got an OEM oil filter. Just ordered that from, you know, the Yamaha site, and had it shipped to the door. I think it was like $8-9 or something like that. So let's get this oil drained. All right, now one thing that you're always going to want to do is when this is letting it drain, you know, first service, you want to definitely double check to see, obviously, if there are any metal shavings or anything that's going to come out of the bike that should be alarmed, any type of alarming. Usually your drain plug itself is magnetic, and I can show you that right here. Here's your drain plug. And if there are some metal shavings or some clutch dust and stuff like that, remember, it's the first time the bike has been fired, and now you're riding it, whether you're riding it hard, soft, whatever, it's gonna have some in there. But it definitely shouldn't be any chunks or anything like that. If it does have some chunks or anything like that, you need to take that shit back to the dealer and definitely probably be demanding a new bike, because you're gonna have some serious problems down the road, or you already have some serious problems, but you're gonna have some more serious ones some more serious ones obviously down the road. So go ahead and let this drain, then obviously we'll cap that back up, wipe everything down, get the oil filter off, install that, and then top this thing off with oil. I think it uses 4.1, 4.1 with no filter, change 4.3. Again, always, you know, obviously you really can't drain the oil cooler in the oil cooler line, so it's probably gonna be right around the 4-quart range. But also double check when you're filling it up on the eyesight window. You do have to start the bike and have the bike run, because it has to obviously pump through and cycle through and get all the oil everywhere that it's going to need to be, because you don't want this thing to not have enough oil and then you could burn it up. That's not good. So we'll go ahead and let this drain here for a few more minutes, cap this sucker back up, and get the oil filter off and throw the new one on. Tech tip in the middle, here we go. So, as we have this, one thing is you can see how chewed up I had to grab that with the pliers, because that's the only tool I had here that would fit this oil filter itself. I didn't have my oil filter wrench for that correct size, but how tight I had to grab that with my pliers to get it off. Now the dealer did that, not the dealer, excuse me, the manufacturer did that when it was installed. There's no need to tighten the shit out of this thing so tight. There's a rubber seal on the inside of this, that black rubber seal right there, that will automatically seal it with the heat of the motorcycle. You put a couple dabs of oil on it, around it with your finger, around the rim, and you throw it on there. Just obviously make sure that that surface is clean. Same thing that goes with the drain plug. No need to, tighten it down completely and go crazy. You know, 10, 15 foot-pounds of torque at max, that's it. You don't want to strip it out or anything like that, because the bike is going to expand and contract with the heat as the oil and the bike gets hot. So again, rule of thumb that I always do with oil filters, it doesn't matter what car or motorcycle that it is. If it's this type of oil filter, thread it on by hand first until it stops, and then give it a good 3/4 to 1 full turn after it's tight, and then that sucker will be sealed. After that, it'll come off. Then you usually don't need a wrench or anything like that. You can take it off by hand, and then you're going to be good. But anything after that is overkill, and you're just making it more of a pain in your ass, just like this, to get this sucker off. But now that this side's done, we'll go ahead and spray everything down with some brake cleaner, clean everything up, reinstall the fairings, and let's dump some fresh oil in this joker. All right, so we're gonna throw this oil in there. I'm gonna make it really weird for all of you viewers, the 10 to 20,000 people watching. It's me, I'm dumping this oil in because my neighbor came over and he wanted me to talk and see my production. You can't see him, he's behind the camera. But anyway, again, like I mentioned, 4 quarts, 4.3, changing the filter. And once we get to the 4th quart, we'll take a peek at the sight glass on the other side of the bike. And we'll see exactly where it is, and we'll start the bike and see how it goes. And now we'll let the oil drip down from the top of the cylinder head. Now that the oil pump has pumped it through, and we'll check our sight glass, and you can see it's already starting to fill up a little bit, but we'll check it here in another minute and we'll see exactly if it's full. If it's not full within the 2 scratched lines in there, then you'll just push, obviously dump a little bit more oil into the side of the crankcase. And that will wrap it up here for the 600-mile service here on the bike. Because I mentioned before in the beginning of the video, of course, I already did the chain tension, obviously checked the links, obviously in the back of the swing arm, so everything is good like that, but that chain is definitely going to need to be tightened up coming up here very shortly. So now that the bike is all good, I've obviously checked the oil, everything's good, it's spot on, and that's going to wrap it up here for today's episode. Again, if you guys like what you saw, don't forget to subscribe, Facebook, Instagram, at the Speedbug, obviously same name here as YouTube, and we will check you all for another episode here on the Speedbug channel. Deuces, guys.